Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in to tonight's broadcast of VORW Radio International, the voice of the report of the week, giving out to you this Monday, the 24th of February, 2025. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. Hope everyone out there listening in is feeling and doing all right, and I wish you good reception conditions. In tonight's program, a roundup of select current events, following the news, listener-requested music. Please stay tuned. The news is next. Hamas has released 6 more hostages held in Gaza in exchange for 602 Palestinian prisoners freed later on Saturday. The released hostages included 4 kidnapped during the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel. Tal Shoham, Omer Shem Tov, Elia Cohen, and Omer Wenkert. The 2 other men freed, Avira Mengistu and Hisham al-Sayed, had been held in Gaza for years. Mr. Mengistu since 2014 and Mr. al-Sayed since 2015. The 6 are the final hostages still alive to be returned as part of the first phase of a ceasefire deal set to end next Saturday. Israel and Hamas have yet to agree to the terms of the second phase. Later on Saturday, 602 Palestinian prisoners were released, the majority of whom were detained after October 7th, 2023. Of the 602, at least 50 were serving life sentences in Israeli prisons and 60 with high. The position based on the U.S. administration, the logic at least has changed with the change from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. So now the prevailing attitude by the current administration is, if we're giving hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars to a country that's fighting a losing war, what's the point, and when are we going to get something back from all of this? Because again, the U.S. administration interprets the situation in Ukraine right now as being very one-sided, and that the scales are heavily tipped in favor of Zelensky, that he's getting all of this money and we're getting nothing back in return. Especially when it's perceived that Ukraine is fighting a losing battle, which I can interject based on my own observations, and I check these maps every single day. Ukraine is fighting a losing battle as far as where things stand on the front lines. On very rare occasions, maybe once or twice a week, Ukrainian forces maybe capture a series of Russian positions, only to then have that be recaptured by the Russian army within a day or two. There are no gains by Ukraine at this point in time, none whatsoever. Now, one could certainly argue about the stance by the U.S. administration. There are many people out there that do indeed feel that what's going on in Ukraine is a scam or a fraud, or that the United States is being taken advantage of. Other people will look at it and think, no, we're providing crucial support to one of our greatest allies at this point. So it's a matter of interpretation how you want to look at that. But the position of the current administration is obviously what it is, and nothing's changing that. So diplomatically, the situation between the U.S. and Ukraine is very tense at this point. I can't see it getting any better anytime soon. As a matter of fact, it'll probably just get worse with time. It is my opinion, perhaps controversially, that if Starlink gets cut off in Ukraine, it really wouldn't change anything on the battlefield for the Ukrainians, because the outcome would be the same either way, Starlink or not. So we'll have to see if any sort of deal or anything gets worked out at this point, again, because the U.S. and Ukraine are obviously on different pages. The U.S. and the Russian government are more aligned at this point as far as negotiations are concerned. So we'll just have to see over the next few weeks what happens from a diplomatic standpoint, if any deals are signed, who wins out through them, where things stand for Russia, where things stand for Ukraine, where the formal U.S. position is, and if it changes any. But until any of that happens, you just have these back and forth diplomatic barbs, essentially, that are being thrown between the U.S. and Ukraine at this point. And the situation on the ground, it's obviously just a continuation of what we've been seeing. The Russian forces are continuing their swift advance from east to west, especially across southern and central Donetsk Oblast. In Ukraine, pretty much that entire area now is controlled by Russia. And likewise, a significant update again in regards to the situation in Kursk Oblast with the Ukrainian incursion into that part of Russia. So Russian forces have begun making advances from the Russian-controlled parts of Kursk Oblast now into Sumy Oblast of Ukraine. So they've been crossing the border now from Russia into Ukraine. Particularly what the Russian army has been doing is they've been crossing the border through a forested area and are attempting to gain a foothold in northern Sumy Oblast of Ukraine, particularly around the settlements of Novenke and Basivka. And what the Russian army intends to do is essentially moving from north to south. They want to reach this highway called the H07 highway, which is located in Sumy Oblast, Ukraine, and it crosses in to Kursk Oblast, Russia. That is the main and almost only supply route that Ukrainian forces are using to reinforce their positions in Kursk Oblast of Russia. So Russia is moving in, again from north to south into Sumy Oblast of Ukraine, with the aim of just capturing and cutting off that critical supply route. And if that happens, the Ukrainian forces that remain in Kursk Oblast are going to be so unbelievably done for at this point. They will be completely cut off, and it's probably going to be one of the worst defeats Ukraine has suffered in this entire conflict, because they will be trapped in there essentially with very little way out. They probably have to navigate on foot and just essentially go bushwhacking throughout undeveloped areas. There really aren't any other roads in and out, and I think with that route cut, things would fall apart so quickly, it wouldn't even be funny. It would happen so fast. So we'll have to see what happens here, but that's the latest update now that is going on in that regard. We'll have to see if the Russian forces advancing into Sumy Oblast actually reach that highway and cut it off, because if it does, that development will be huge. Geographically speaking, for those that don't know, Sumy Oblast is located in northern Ukraine. It is located to the west of Kharkiv Oblast, to the east of Chernihiv Oblast. Essentially, in northern Ukraine, there are 3 oblasts, with the exception of Luhansk, which is pretty much 100% controlled by Russia at this point. 3 oblasts that border Russia. There's Kharkiv, then to the west there's Sumy, and then to the west of that there's Chernihiv, which borders both Russia and Belarus. And the Russian forces control positions, very small positions, in Chernihiv Oblast. They control a fair amount of territory in Kharkiv Oblast, but since 2022 they haven't controlled any territory in Sumy. That is, until now. Obviously, though, this is being done very strategically with the sole purpose of cutting off that highway. We will see what happens. Rwanda-backed rebels appeared to be heading toward a third major city in eastern Congo, residents said Tuesday, as international pressure rose over the M20. Let me know perhaps what frequency you're tuned in on, again how the signal is coming through. If you wish, you can let me know whereabouts in the country or in the world you are catching this transmission. Likewise, if there is a song you would like to hear played in this broadcast, I am very lenient when it comes down to the music played. Any title, any artist, any genre, any era. Pick a song, any song, I shall note it down and try to the best of my ability to get it played for you. Alright, the way to send in an email, now that I've listed off my whole spiel, of course it would only make sense to give an email address. VORWINFO@gmail.com. Once again, that's VORWINFO@gmail.com. Spelled phonetically, that's Victor, Oscar, Romeo, Whiskey, India, November, Foxtrot, Oscar @gmail.com. Perhaps write in while the next song is playing. The choice is yours, nonetheless. First request of the night goes out to Chuck in Wonder Lake, Illinois. It's The End of the World as We Know It by REM.
That's great. Starts with an earthquake. Birds and snakes and airplane. Then first it's not a plane. I have a hurricane. Listen to yourself. Turn world. Trust its own needs. Don't assume your own needs. Beat it up and not speak. Grant no strings. Not ladder. Circle planet with fair fight. Down a pipe. Wire in a fire. Pursuing 7 days. And the government for hire on the combat site. After what's coming in a hurry with the fury breathing down your neck. Keep my team reporters now with Trump, Kevin Kraft. Look at that. Another plane. Fine. Yes. Overflow. Common sense. A little blue. Save yourself. Save yourself. World. Search its own needs. Listen to your heart. Please tell me with the rapture on the road is the right. Right. You patriotic slam fight. Right. Like Venus. Rain. Night. It's the end of the world as we know it. End of the world as we know it. Monday you can fall apart. Tuesday, Wednesday break my heart. Oh, Thursday doesn't even start. It's Friday, Monday's love.
World as We Know It by REM, a request for Chuck in Wonder Lake, Illinois. If you're tuned into this broadcast right now, any reception reports, pieces of feedback, music requests are welcome. VORWINFO@gmail.com. Zed, listening in from Westfjords, Iceland, would like to hear the selection Human Behavior by Björk.
May not be too loud. And the rocks might melt. And the sea may burn.
Data D808 receiver, listening on 17 kHz. It is great to have the signal coming in loud and clear here in India. Trista, regular listener in Halmstad, Sweden, is checking in likewise. Hello to Carlo in Italy. Good modulation, no interference, strong signal. Drake R8B receiver. We hear from Craig in Perth, Australia. Regular listener on 17 kHz, always enjoying the broadcast. Hello to Harry, listening in. Says I was able to tune into the broadcast on some SDR receivers, both in Finland and Sweden. And I'd like to send my regards to Ralph in Cottbus, Germany, listening in on 17 kHz. Really enjoying the music selection. Said a lot of the songs you play are unknown to me, but I enjoy them very much. huge thank you to everyone out there tuning into the broadcast tonight. What a pleasure it is to have you all listening in. Dear listeners, as we are reaching the conclusion of today's broadcast, I would like to provide you with a broadcast schedule. This program can be heard every Monday at the time of 15:30 UTC. That's 15:30 UTC. On the international shortwave frequency of 17,810 kHz. That's 17,810 kHz. 17.810 megahertz in the 16-meter band. In local time, 3:30 p.m. GMT, 4:30 p.m. Central European Time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern European Time, 6:30 p.m. Arabia Standard Time, 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 10:30 p.m. Indochina Time, and 11:30 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time. This again is every Monday on the international shortwave frequency of 17,810 kHz. If you would like a broadcast schedule in writing or would like to submit a reception report, you can contact this program at the following email address: VORW@gmail.com. I hope you could tune in again next week at this same time and frequency for more good music and discussion. Until then, dear listeners, be safe, be healthy, and I wish you all the very best. Take care. This is VORW.